here with Remax Gateway. Super stoked. We haven't had a financial advisor on our show yet. And we've got Kyle Rash here to tell us about his business and what he does and how he can help our clients, get wealthier and build an awesome portfolio. So Kyle, I'll let you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about who you are, what your background is, and what your business is.
Okay, thanks, Kelly. So my name is Kyle Rash. My background, we've been in Anacortes off and on since 2001, actually down in Oak Harbor. My family, I have a wife, Jennifer, 2 children. I started out in the Marine Corps back in 1991. My first experience in the Pacific Northwest was in 2001. As a matter of fact, we arrived in the middle of a windstorm, much like what we had last night, into Oak Harbor. So the house that we moved into had no power, and we woke up wondering where in the heck we had just moved to. But we fell in love with the place. We got to meet some great friends, did a lot of hiking, did a lot of camping, did a lot of West Coast skiing, and just decided that if we ever had an opportunity to come back, we were going to jump all over it. Well, that opportunity happened for us in 2007. We came back, bought a house. Fortunately, we were right beside Vince and Kelly Lane, got to be really good friends with them. I wound up going back as an instructor, as a Marine instructor at Whidbey Island, and as the training officer, and eventually wound up as the executive officer of all the Marines there on the base. Unfortunately, we had to move away one more time so I could finish up and be eligible for retirement. So we went to the East Coast like a lot of the Navy families out there have to do, and then came back retired. My wife is an anesthesia provider. She came back and set up her practice, and then I moved out as soon as I retired. We had one child as soon as we got to Maryland when we moved out there, and we had another one as soon as we got back to Washington State. So my 2 girls are now just turned 10 and one turned 7 tomorrow. My personal experience as a planner, well, I think I'd done financial planning pretty much my entire life, managing my own stuff. But it really started for me when we had a financial planner that at the one time in our lives that we really needed help, he let us down. And that was as I was retiring, and we knew things were changing, as most military families out there that are going through retirement understand. And we started looking at what we'd been paying in fees and thought, hey, we need to talk to our guy and see if we can get this reduced. Well, he refused. So as a result, I started doing a lot of research, transferred our money away from him and managed it myself.
You know what's crazy? You bring that up, Kyle. It is very hard to find out what fees they charge. And unlike my industry where I have to fully disclose, I mean, here's a sheet, here's the seller's net proceeds, here's exactly what I'm charging to sell your house. I don't know that you ever get that information up front. I mean, when you sit down, and so that story I think can really resonate with a lot of our viewers out there.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think that leads into a great segment of like how you're different, how you stand out against the norm and what you offer.
So that's a great question. And my ultimate goal with this, and what I decided to do as I was educating myself, and then got a lot of prompting from some great friends that said, hey, this is your thing. You need to start a business with this. And I was like, no, I just like helping people. And after a couple of years, I said, maybe I should. So that's what I've done. But my business model is I only charge an hourly rate for the services that I provide, period. There's no AUM model. There's no commissions. There's no other hidden fees. I don't sell insurance. So you're not going to get some kind of a commission off of me. I don't get money for referrals. I don't take money for referrals. It's simply the hourly rate. And with that hourly rate, you choose what you want. If you want a full financial plan from start to finish, we'll work that out. But if you come to me and you say, hey, I'm trying to figure out how to save for college education for my kids. Well, we'll do a cash flow analysis because I've got to know what you make. I've got to know what you spend, and we'll figure that out. And then my belief is that if you like what I provide, you'll come back for the next one, even if it's just a second set of eyes on the financial decisions you're making. If you're making a multi-$1,000 decision, is it worth a couple hours to make sure that that decision is truly in the best interest and accomplishes what you want?
Nice. So let's say someone's just wanting to get started in investing. I mean, what do you recommend? What are the steps? What are the processes? And kind of what does your consultation look like?
So first of all, my consultation's free. The first time I've got to meet with a client, I've got to make sure it's going to work. And I think it's important for the client to meet with me, ask questions as they see fit to see if I'm the right fit for them as well. I think a lot, as with real estate, there's got to be a lot of trust there. And I want people asking questions, and I want the opportunity to hear your story, find out what your goals and priorities are, and see if I can help you. I think I probably can, but it really needs to be something that you buy into and you truly want. For those starting out, if it's a young couple, my advice is just save as much as you can in the beginning, as early as you can. Create an investment policy statement. Take advantage of that long time that you have to accumulate your money while you let it work for you. Avoid high fees. Build habit patterns that are going to last throughout your investing career. And don't really worry about retirement or the things that are 40 years down the road. Concentrate on your career, your family, and then concentrate on insuring against the catastrophic. So what do I mean by catastrophic? If you're the primary breadwinner of your family and you just buy a brand new house and you die, what happens to your family? Well, that's the insurance against the catastrophic, with the goal that eventually, as you continue to invest, you may be able to accept some of that risk and self-insure. But otherwise, the other thing I tell people, and we can get into this a little more, is if you're investing, I say write the check. Write the check means if you have an investment advisor who is pursuing some AUM fee, write the check for that cost. Don't let it come out of the assets that you're saving and investing. Write the check. That's one of the probably the biggest thing that I did early on is I looked at, all right, if I can invest into a 401k and I can only put $19,000 a year in, well, why would I pay somebody $3,000 or $4,000 that comes out of that, and then that's out of my investment? I'd rather write that $3,000 or $4,000 check, let that money stay in my account, and continue to grow and compound.
I love it. This is stuff that people don't talk about, you know?
Well,
It's
that's my goal, is because I want to educate people to make an informed decision. That's the whole goal right there.
because we're all told to invest, 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 but you know, how do you invest? Where do you start? And you know, there's so many, I've read so many good books over my career, and there's really great stories that go back to, you know, it's compounding, right? So when you start at a really young age and maybe you're only stocking away 30 bucks a month, but the person that starts investing a lot earlier in life, even if they stop at some point, will be way far ahead of the people that invest a little later on in life and don't start earlier. So I guess with that piece, Kyle, where do you foresee, I mean, what are your favorite investments? I mean, if you're doing this with a client and you're sitting down and I mean, it's different for everybody, but like, where do you foresee the investment, the stock market going? What do you recommend for investments? I mean, do you have some favorite tips and tricks?
Well, 75% of the time the stock market's going up, right? That's the key mantra. It's just you've got to be able to accept the risk of the ride up and down to get there. So that's where you do a risk assessment and find out what's going to allow you to sleep at night. I personally am a huge fan of low-cost index funds. I don't think I have the ability to pick winning stocks to beat the return of the market over a 40-year investment career of trying to do it. So I would rather get the market's return, whatever that is. The saying that I tell people is, I would rather own one brick in 10,000 buildings than 10,000 bricks in one. So I go with low-cost index funds. And then what I do is I slant or I tilt a little bit towards value and a little bit towards smaller cap companies. But I invest in the entire market.
So what are your favorite index funds? Because I mean, I hear Vanguard, I hear, oh gosh, Fidelity is a great one. I mean, and so, and I'm assuming you just have to diversify in them, you know, whether some are US, some are international. And so walk us through a process. So if I was a new client coming in and you're like, hey, Kelly, we need to up your portfolio and invest in index funds, you'd kind of leverage them in different sectors of the market, right?
Okay, so sure, Kelly, if you came to me and you said, hey, I want you to look at this stuff and do some investment analysis for me, it would all start with that cash flow. We'd want to see what your income is, what your expenses are, what you have, what you're currently putting in, and where you can afford to put some more. Then we'd have to look at your risk. What is the return that you need to get to the lifestyle you want in retirement? And that'll tell you what average return you need annually to get there based on what you have now. And historically, I lean on historical averages of various portfolios, whether you're 70% stocks and 30% bonds or 50-50. And then we go through and figure out what you and your family are comfortable with. What's the risk that you're willing to accept for that potential reward later on down the line? And when we figure out what that asset allocation is, then we figure out, well, what part of that needs to be US, what part needs to be international. And that's just a process where we go back and forth with recommendations until we get something you're comfortable with. And the most important part of it is the best plan is the one you're going to follow, right? There's studies that have shown that the worst thing you can do is start chasing different plans. Like, oh, this is too hard. We are not sleeping well at night. We need to sell and go do something else. Well, then you've lost that. You've realized the loss that you had. And now you got to figure out when's the right time to put it back in. So it's best to try to get that tagged early on so you can ride with the plan that you choose and then be okay with some of the ups and downs that you're sure to experience along the way. When you talk about Vanguard, Fidelity, any specific funds, when you go with the index funds that I like to choose, you can't go wrong with any of them. They all do pretty much the same thing. And the good thing about it is the competitive costs that they have to go into an S&P 500 with Vanguard versus Fidelity versus TD Ameritrade, you're paying all about the same. The basis points difference is really not worth it in the long run. Where you get hammered are the fees that your financial advisor might charge you if you're under an AUM model and where those fees are taken from. That's the biggest challenge to portfolio growth in my.
Let's just go back to the basics here, because what's fascinating to me is, you get your statement, right? And it says you're making 8%. Well, by the time the reality isn't, you're not making 8%, because by the time you subtract out the fees, you're at what percent, and that isn't necessarily clear on the statement sometimes. So,
yeah, you're right.
So now if I was a seasoned investor coming to you, what would that look like? I mean, we sit down, we have a talk. I already have a big investment portfolio. I mean, I know this is all going to be case by case. There's not going to be like, hey, one shoe, one size fits all. But I mean, what does that conversation look like?
So as a seasoned investor coming to me, what we're going to assume with that is that you've been doing it for a while, right? You know what you've got your portfolio, you've been doing this for a while. So it probably means you've got a little bit of age and experience. So then my opinion is we probably need to shift our focus and make sure, number one, that you've got the right asset allocation to achieve the goal that you want. But then we need to start looking a lot more at the estate planning and tax efficiency side of it, right? So as you've developed this portfolio, you've developed the age and wisdom behind it, you probably have some kids, you may be looking at grandkids, so you may be thinking about gifting strategies, you may be thinking about end of life things, and that's where estate planning comes in and tax efficiency, because all of us want to pass along the wealth that we accumulate as per our desires and wishes. And there are certain ways to do that set you up better to make sure that happens. And the way to do that is make sure that you're tax efficient and you've got your estate planning in order.
I love it. So do you work with estate attorneys then? So it's like you kind of give the advice to prep and then you partner up with an attorney and then you make sure it's all structured properly?
So that's a great question. Absolutely. I have to run a fine line of, I cannot practice law because I'm not an attorney. But I can go through and analyze and say, hey, here's my take on your estate. I'm also not a CPA, but I can look at it in ways that an attorney and a CPA won't look at the overall picture, because I can evaluate it from an estate standpoint and say, I think you should pursue a trust because of this. But then you're going to have to go to an attorney and get that trust drawn up, because that's the practice of law. I can say, hey, I think you should spend this money here, and this is what's going on for the tax efficiencies, but you'll need to share that with your CPA or your accountant to make sure they're on board. As a financial planner, I'm trained, the schooling that I have, to be the mediator and be the guy that focuses those efforts for you. So if you authorize me to talk to your CPA or accountant, I'm going to go talk to them and we're going to figure it out. And then we're going to go back to you with saying, hey, your CPA had a better idea, or they're on board now, they understand what we want to do. The estate attorney has this idea and I agree with it. I think that's the best avenue for you tax-wise, and the ability to pass along things as you wish in your will to happen. And that's what we do.
Yeah, and I think that's awesome, because you need to build your A team, and that's what I call it. It's like where you're having the attorney, the financial advisor, and the CPA all communicating right on the same level.
Yep.
That builds a beautiful portfolio, beautiful protection, and so many people don't have that, and so I think that's really key when it comes to being a seasoned investor, is to make sure that all the moving pieces are talking together, so you're taking advantage of everything that you can financially and setting up for estate planning. So I think that's awesome, Kyle. So let's see here. What else do we have on the agenda here? So what is your investment philosophy? I mean, you kind of went through some of that, and I don't know if you touched on all of it, but if there's anything else you wanted to share on your investment philosophy.
No, I think that's great. I think that's an important question. And I think it goes towards people understanding how I view investments and how I view how investments impact the overall plan. And I've posted this on my website. So if you go to my website, it tells you exactly how I invest. So we'll go over the highlights of it right now. The first thing I do is it always starts with my investment philosophy statement, my investment policy. It's something I review annually. I make sure no big changes need to be made. There's not been some life experience or event that I need to change it. And it refreshes my memory of why I'm doing what I do. Then I determine what I can afford to put away in my 401k per year, based on the expenses that I see coming up or the income that I think I'm going to make. And I set that up to start that investment. I always plan to be able to contribute the maximum I can to my Roth. And I fund that as early as I can in the year. I go through and determine what I want as a minimum account balance for cash available, because what expenses do I see coming up? Is this the year that the heat pump goes out? And it was. This year was the year the heat pump went out, and it was getting replaced today. So if I see those things coming up or I need to save, I figure out what that minimum account balance is and what's coming this year. I rebalance once a year. And as I rebalance, and then after I rebalance with new contributions, I put my contributions into the areas that need to rebalance. That's what I use my new contributions for. And then around September, October, I take a look at where I am. Have I had more income or fewer expenses? Can I afford to put more in my 401k? And if I max out the 401k and still have more, it goes into my brokerage account. And that's the way I do it every single year.
It's so cool that you have a system. I mean, I'd say most Americans wing it, Kyle. And I mean, that's why you need somebody like Kyle on your side. I'm a people person. I react, I make decisions quickly. And what's cool is I know, Kyle, your brain is very A-type, and I love that about you, because you run a mean Excel spreadsheet in the sense of budgeting. And like you just said, you systematically went through exactly how you evaluated it every year. So everybody needs a Kyle on their side. We all need a Kyle on our side. So, and I love that, because some of the things that always pop into my mind too, when I've had financial advisors, usually they only look at one sector, and I'm real estate heavy. I can't help it. So I've got 70% of my portfolio is real estate, and then 30% it would be, stocks, bonds, mutual funds, Roth IRA, that kind of stuff. So I always need someone that can kind of take a look at the whole picture, which I feel like some investors can't do, is say, hey, how do we plan this all out? What do we pay off first? What do we put in our savings accounts? Do we keep these properties? Do we sell these properties? Kind of evaluate the whole picture. And it definitely sounds like that's something that you offer.
Yeah, I'd love to. You talk about the Excel spreadsheets. I'm a bit of a geek I'm a bit of a geek with the Excel spreadsheets, but I will tell you that I've created a lot of Excel spreadsheets because I couldn't find the information for myself.
Yeah.
I've created dashboards, I've created rebalancing portfolios, and that's what I use. I have a spreadsheet that I call How Much is Enough that tells me, based on 9 inputs, what I need to have at a portfolio at the age that I want to retire. And it tells me where I am now and what return I need average per year to get there. I will share that for free with anyone who wants it. All right.
Love
It
it.
takes about 20 minutes, probably over the phone. We could Zoom just to show you where the inputs are. And the beauty of it is you can do it in the privacy of your own home. If you don't want to share your financial information with someone else because you want to see where you stack up, that's fine. Take the spreadsheet, do it in your own home, play around with the numbers, because there are several of them that start that you'll put it in there and you can't change it. Starts off with your age, right? Can't change your age.
Yeah.
So there's one of the inputs that you can't change. But what it will tell you is it'll show you how close, how likely you are to make it to the portfolio that you need in order to retire. So if you don't have it, what do you have to do? You have to go back and you have to either assume you're going to live on less money, work longer, save more. That's really, and so you can play with those numbers and it'll tell you, well, we're saving 15,000 a year. That's not going to cut it. We need to save 20,000 a year.
Yeah.
And I use it every year for myself because I update where my portfolio status is. And I usually go in about quarterly and just kind of play around with the numbers.
And here's the one thing I just want to put out there with everybody is, if you look at the stats for Americans, most Americans don't have 1 month's worth of savings in their account. The one thing I want to encourage everybody right now is to start investing in yourself, start savings in yourself, because you guys, it's not ever too late. And, and don't ever be ashamed of that. But I think what's so cool about it is Kyle can get you in the right direction, right? So don't be embarrassed of where you're at now. Start now, and start saving for your future. And I feel like they got to start somewhere, even if it's just a small amount, because that just compounds and it builds and builds. And it's something that, eventually you can be proud of. So, the other thing I wanted to ask you about was benchmarks, Kyle. So again, those are probably different for everybody, but, the question was, what investment benchmarks do you have?
The investment benchmarks, see if I understand that right. I look for the return of the market. So I take a look at, if I'm invested in the S&P 500, I want to get as close to the S&P 500 as possible, right? And I'm willing to accept the return of the market in the S&P 500 minus the fees that I pay. And that's where those fees become so important. And that's where, if you have a financial manager who is charging an assets under management percentage fee, they have to overcome that fee to beat the index funds or whatever they have you invested in. And that's very, very difficult to do for any length of time, right? So if the S&P is making 8% and you're paying 1% in your fees, which are also coming out of the investments you have, you've got to make more than 8% on your return. That's just hard to do. It's hard to beat the market consistently. Some of the guys that have done this for their entire careers, have a 3, 4, 5-year run, and they're like, whoa, and then they fall off the deep end and they go out of business.
Yeah.
I'm willing to accept the return of the market. And that return of the market is going to be based on historical averages of what you determine your asset allocation should be for the risk you're willing to accept.
I love it. So Kyle, where can people reach you? I know we've been on for about 25, 30 minutes and I don't want to keep everybody tonight, and we're super stoked everybody tuned in, but where do they call you? Where do they go if they want to get in touch with you and do a consultation with you just to see if you're a good fit for them?
Sure. Give me a call for free. Give me a call. Let's talk. It's 360-632-5664. You can email me. My initials are KGR, Kyle Grantham Rash, at championfinancialplanning.com. Or you can go to my website at www.championfinancialplanning.com. And I look forward to fielding any questions. and helping anyone I can.
I love it. I love new thinking, different ways to do business, and your wealth of knowledge. And I know you do well in your life, and I think you can help a lot of people out there get financially sound, right, and invest in their futures, so that way, they can have a great retirement. That's all what we're trying to do. So, Kyle, thank you so much for tuning in
Thank
on
you,
the
Kelly.
webinar.